January 3rd, 2026, the United States executed Operation Absolute Resolve precision strike on Caracas, combined with the Delta Force raid that resulted in the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife 𝐂𝐚𝐲 Flores, who are now detained in New York facing narco-terrorism charges. President Trump immediately signaled his intent to unlock Venezuela's 303 billion barrel oil reserve, which is the largest oil reserve in the world, with 17% global reserve through American energy majors. For supply chain executives, this isn't geopolitics. It's a live stress test for energy market, tanker routing and contingency planning. Oil logistics is becoming a weaponized foreign policy for future, ending the shadow fleet era of reflagged opaque ownership vessel and replacing it with a compliance, transparency and permanently higher cost. In today's episode of Logistically Speaking, we will dissect and understand the real intent of the US behind these attacks that have been condemned worldwide. This military operation culminates 4 years of sanctions that reduced Venezuelan production from 3.5 million barrels per day in the 1990s to just 1.1 million barrels per day today. Maduro's mismanagement left the Orinoco Belt's areas heavy sour crude stranded, even though it provides perfect feedstock for US Gulf Coast refineries such as Motiva and Marathon. Venezuelan heavy crude is uniquely problematic. It is extremely heavy and viscous, contain high sulfur, metal and carbon content with very low API gravity, and it's a logistic intensive energy form. In practical terms, this means logistics must engineer the movement of oil, not merely transport it. However, transition made it inaccessible. Capturing Maduro creates the legal runway needed for regained transition, which would allow Chevron, Exxon and ConocoPhillips to restart operations. Trump explicitly stated US will temporarily run Venezuela to tap reserve for global sake. The real strategic play involves countering China's $60 billion Venezuelan debt for oil leverage while securing over 3 million barrels per day of cheap, heavy crude amid rising Middle East tensions. Venezuela currently exports approximately 1.1 million barrels per day, primarily Orinoco's heavy crude to Asia, that is India and China and Europe. The current maritime blockade and field shutdowns have cut output by 25% in the short term. Let me show you an operational breakdown presented in a clear table format on the screen. Venezuelan extra heavy crude is strategically important for India and China because their complex refineries and large-scale logistics system can convert deeply discounted, difficult oil into high-value fuel at scale. For both countries, Venezuelan oil is not just a supply source but a lever for energy security, cost control and geopolitical flexibility in an increasingly fragmented global oil market. Tanker charter rates for Asia route have already increased by 12% since the strike, and insurance premiums have spiked 150% for Venezuelan waters. Refineries acquiring heavy sour crude, which accounts for 85% of Indian capacity, now face immediate margin compression. India faces a perfect storm from this crisis. Before the 2019 sanctions, India imported 28% of Venezuela's export, valued at $7.39 billion annually, because discounted Orinoco crude was ideal for Jamnagar's coking units. US pressure, including Elliott Abraham's 2019 diplomacy, forced these imports down to $89 million in financial year 2022, with partial recovery to $250 million in financial year 23 through Rusnet barter arrangements. Current strikes threaten this fragile restart. In this scenario, there are 3 immediate actions to be considered for Indian refineries. Number 1, activate Guyana contingency. Secure 400,000 barrels per day of similar quality crude at a $6 per barrel premium. Number 2, pursue US Gulf heavies. Take advantage of the Motiva arbitrage window that opens the post-sanction Venezuela supply. Number 3. Secure spot Russian Urals. Ramp up existing Rosneft channels that facilitated Venezuela import post-sanctions. In the long term, US-controlled Venezuelan production will become the cheapest heavy sour crude globally, which strengthens US-India energy alignment despite diplomatic frictions. Energy aspects, Amrita Sen notes that the strikes deliberately spared oil infrastructure, allowing field to become operational within 72 hours under technical administration. Rapid Energy warns against potential China retaliation as Beijing holds 49% of 𝐂𝐚𝐩𝐿 Venezuela's US refining asset and could block US access. The Wall Street Journal's sources confirm Chevron is positioned with 30-year Orinoco licenses ready for activation. The oil price reaction remains muted with Brent at $74.80, reflecting market expectation of rapid stabilization rather than prolonged chaos, unlike the 2003 Iraq situation. While the 2003 US invasion of Iraq increased geopolitical risk in oil market, the surge in oil prices to nearly $147 per barrel occurred in 2008, driven mainly by demand growth, tight supply and financial speculation. Tanker insurance rate increased by 300%, Asia import costs rose by 22%, and India's GDP growth dipped by 1.8% due to energy inflation. Similarly, in 2011, with the attack on Libya, a 1.6 million barrel per day outrage drove Brent from $110 to the equivalent of $220. European refineries suffered and China chartered entire classes of tankers. The attack on Venezuela at the start of 2026 involved smaller baseline production, that is 1.1 million barrel per day versus Iraq's 2.5 million, pre-existing sanctions infrastructure and potential US operational control. This suggests a maximum disruption period of 3 to 6 months. In the long term, one can expect a bearish flood from over 3 million barrels per day. That said, there will be an interim time where prices will rise and there will be significant disruption to supply chain routes and processes. The window for proactive logistic decision is measured in weeks and not months. In this scenario, let me talk on some step-by-step playbook you can look at implementing. Week 1 impact has already started. Tanker charter premium have risen 20%. To counter this, lock in 90 days contracts immediately. The next step to be diversifying heavy sour crude sources. Guyana offers 400,000 barrel per day spare capacity and Canada has 500,000 expansion potential. And lastly, update insurance process to exclude Venezuelan water pending stabilization. 3 probable scenarios can happen during month 1 to month 3. The first is baseline case, which has 70% probability. Maduro's successor emerges, sanctions lift in quarter 2 of 2026 and 2 million barrels per day come online by quarter 4. Then the bear case, which has 20% probability. Chinese proxy forces emerge, keeping fields offline for more than 6 months. And then lastly, bull case, which has 10% probability. Rapid US technical administration achieve 3.5 million barrels per day by 2027. As one of the countries likely to face a significant setback, the India-specific recommendation emphasizes maintaining a 45-day crude stockpile at Jamnagar, activating Reliance 300,000 barrels per day Canadian crude contract option, and closely monitoring the February US-India summit for potential energy level signals. For India, this is not merely a supply disruption. It is a strategic recalibration moment. Venezuela exemplifies classic energy geopolitics, where military capability secures economic advantage. Expect short-term pain, including a 3 to 6 months of elevated freight costs and crude prices $5 to $10 per barrel higher, followed by long-term gain from the cheapest heavy sour crude available globally. India stands to benefit strategically as US-controlled Venezuela becomes a preferred partner over sanctioned Russia and Iran. Review your heavy crude exposure today. Run 3 scenario models for your supply planning. 𝐾𝐚𝐝 charters remain available now at 18,000 per day. Thank you for watching, and I invite you to answer the crucial question. Will US control over Venezuela's oil sector benefit or hurt India in the long term? And don't forget to share this information with your fellow logisticians. Subscribe to stay vigilant on update on this attack. Thank you and see you next week.